How to build a late medieval city from scratch. First, you must, personally for your city, give it a suitable name. Let it spread across the entire continent and leave a lasting legacy. I will list several ways of naming cities for your reference. The first is to be derived from the early native inhabitants of this place. For example, the central city of the Romagna region in northern Italy. The name Forlk derives from the Roman Republic, period's Latin name, meaning land of the Livian clan. That is, the land of the native inhabitants. The second way is to name it after a great ruler. For example, the renowned Constantinople. It was once a Thracian settlement, named Lygos. Later, the Greeks established Byzantium here. The Roman Emperor Constantine, after rebuilding Byzantium, named this great city Constantinople after himself. The third way is to name it based on the area's early landmarks, buildings, or natural landforms. For example, Bruges in the Low Countries very likely originates from the Old Dutch word for bridge, while York in England means place of the yew. Trees, the fourth way, is to be derived from words of praise or auspicious, meaning, for example, Mainz in the German region, indirectly, originates from the Latin word for great. The famous city of art, Florence, means to flourish, conveying good fortune. Of course, the above are just a few typical examples. You can break the mold and determine the city's name according to your own preference. So then, have you decided what this city will be called? If you don't have a good idea for now, let's call it the city of Santalos the Centaur. Next, you can design a coat of arms for your city. It will indicate the city's ruler, that is, your family's origin. It can also represent the spirit and will of the city, or even more meanings. In the German regions, there were numerous imperial free cities. They all had their own coats of arms. Among them, a large portion used the pattern of the imperial eagle. In the 12th century, German monarchical power was strong. In the centuries that followed, some cities, relying on their economic status, gradually from the monarchs and feudal lords, gained a certain degree of autonomy and were called imperial cities, directly responsible to the Holy Roman Emperor. Some even broke away from the jurisdiction of the diocese. They were called free cities. In the 15th century, the two merged and were collectively known as free imperial cities. These cities were directly loyal to the Holy Roman Emperor. Therefore, many adopted the pattern of the imperial eagle in their coats of arms. The Siebmacher's Armorial of 1605 records that out of 50 for free imperial cities, 28 used the eagle as their emblem, accounting for 51.8%. For example, Aachen, Frankfurt, Wetzlar, etc. The city coat of arms of Milan primarily adopted its ruling families, the Visconti family's serpentine pattern, and when the city's lordship changed, the coat of arms would also, according to the ruling family, be altered accordingly. In the coat of arms of the Polish city of Wrocław, the image of the city's patron saint was adopted, the image of John the Baptist. The main element of Paris's coat of arms consists of a ship, symbolizing the importance of shipping to the city. This motif first appeared in the early 13th century. Beginning in the 14th century, it was applied to the city's escutcheon, and at the top was added a blue background with fleur-de-lis, this representative French heraldic pattern. So what elements will you use in your city's coat of arms? Will it be based on your family's coat of arms to highlight your greatness, or based on the city's characteristics to highlight the city's spirit? Or will you use other patterns with special meaning? Of course, the ways to divide an escutcheon are many and varied. You can absolutely merge multiple concepts into a single coat of arms. If you don't have a good idea for now, I can provide you with a temporary coat of arms. When you attend the grand ceremony of the city's founding, this coat of arms will be the brightest star. At such a grand ceremony, your magnificent image is also of utmost importance. You can wear clothes and hats made of wool, silk, and velvet to show off your splendor. These rich fabrics all come from prosperous city trade. Silk is transported from the Far East to Constantinople and then along the Mediterranean sea routes to the various Italian city-states. Velvet originates from Florence or Venice, while wool comes from England and the Burgundy region. Next, we will focus on the city's location selection. In the late Middle Ages to the Renaissance era, cities were the commercial centers of their regions. Therefore, convenient transportation was one of the most important factors in choosing a city's location. Among them, sea transport, inland river, and land routes were the three main modes of transportation. Therefore, cities of this era can be roughly divided into port cities, inland, river cities, and cities at land transport hubs. Among these, seaport cities and river port cities were more numerous. Of course, many water transport cities were themselves also hubs for land transport. In addition, there were some cities that emerged due to a special status. The holy city of three religions. Jerusalem is the most typical example. It is located in southern Italy, on the Bay of Naples on the west coast. The city was built along the southwestern coastline and is an important port for Mediterranean sea transport. Port city. While Paris is a typical inland waterway, shipping city, the Seine River passes through the center of the city. The El de la site in the center of the river was for a long time the religious and administrative center of Paris. The famous Notre Dame Cathedral is located on this river island. Bruges is rather special. It is located at the crossroads of the Hanseatic League's northern trade. Therefore, the Hanseatic League built a transportation hub in Bruges. Cities like Bruges, which are close to the port, but not built directly on it, mainly rely on tides and canals to connect with sea transport routes. Therefore, natural changes in the waterways have a crucial impact on this city's economic status. A crucial impact. For example, the silting of the Zwin estuary around 1500 caused the city to quickly fall behind Antwerp. Milan is located between the Po River to the south and the Alpine passes to the north. It was initially a land transport hub city. The Naviglio Grande of Milan opened in 1272, further enhanced its role in transportation. The upgraded Milan canals in the 15th century could allow goods from the inland city of Milan to travel downstream to a port like Venice to conduct maritime trade. So then, how will you choose a location for your own city? I suggest you choose a port connected to an inland river to build your city, to maximize the role of water transport. After the location is selected, we should plan the city's overall structure and outline in advance. The city's outline, in fact, largely depends on its geographical location. That is to say, it has an inseparable relationship with the site. Seaport cities are mostly distributed along the coastline. To facilitate the layout of port and dock facilities, their outlines are relatively irregular. For example, Constantinople, Lisbon, etc. Inland river cities are generally built along one or both sides of a river. For example, Paris, where the river runs through the city, and London, which is centered on one side of the river, Chester, etc. Sometimes, special terrains like river islands can also become important districts within the city, becoming transportation centers or important locations for the city's defensive facilities. On this basis, the entire city will still try to be planned in a circular or a more compact layout to shorten travel time, while inland or canal cities, since they are mostly built on flat terrain, are less restricted by topography. They are mainly planned in a concentric circle shape to facilitate reaching the city center fastest from any side. For example, Milan, Bruges, etc. There are also some more special city forms. For example, the water city of Venice, built almost entirely on water, and also the twin cities of Buda and Pest, facing each other across the river. So, how will you plan your city's outline? I suggest that you should make the city's outline as circular as possible, with the inland river passing through the city center, and have the inland river connect to the seaport. After completing the city's basic framework, we can estimate the city's population. Constantinople was likely the largest city during many periods of the Middle Ages. Regarding statistics and research on its population, there are many different views in another time and space. The famous scholar Anthony Caldella's estimates that at its peak in the mid-6th century, Constantinople's population was approximately 500,000, with a floating range of 400,000 to 750,000. His basis is the population carrying capacity of the city's size, and the population that could be supplied by the grain transport volume, and not necessarily the city's actual population. Constantinople's population, after a sharp decline in the following centuries, reached about 400,000 again in the 13th century. After the Fourth Crusade, it once again fell to below 100,000. During this period, large areas of empty land appeared within Constantinople. In 1403, a Spanish court ambassador stayed in Constantinople. He stated that ruins and vegetable gardens were visible everywhere within the city walls. This indirectly confirms the decline of the city's population during this period. A more relevant example for you would be the commercial cities of late medieval Italy. Florence, Milan, etc. Florence, this city, which rose on the wool, trade and banking, before the Black Death pandemic in the mid-14th century, had a population of about 125,000. Venice and other Italian cities like Milan had similar population figures. Additionally, around 1328, the population of Paris was about 250,000, and London was about 80,000. Of course, these numbers all have a certain margin of error, or may vary due to different statistical methods, but I believe your city's population will be around 100,000. Therefore, planning the living space for these people in advance and ensuring the city's resources meet their needs are issues you must consider. If you can properly address the people's livelihood, you will surely become the citizens' beloved leader. Your statue will stand tall in the city center. Next, we have to consider a very serious issue: the city's defense. In this era, the vast majority of cities had walls. Some even had multiple sets of walls. For example, Milan. Of course, the longer the perimeter of the walls, the higher the difficulty of defense. A long defensive line is difficult to man sufficiently at every point, so only a limited number of guards can be arranged to focus on defending key points like the city gates, and dispatch men to patrol the walls regularly. Therefore, many cities had castles or fortresses built within their walls, or connected the city walls with a castle or fortress. The fortress is the city's last line of defense. When invaders are at the city gates, and you lack defensive troops, you can also retreat to the fortress to defend it. And the fortress can also serve as the city's military command post and barracks. Of course, these castles and fortresses were sometimes also the residences of the city's rulers and their administrative offices. From this 16th century map of Milan, we can infer that Milan's fortress was located on the north side of the city, while the Tower of London is located on the east side of the city of London, on the north bank of the River Thames. It is a castle built after the Norman conquest by William I to defend and control the London city. It is both a sturdy barracks castle and a magnificent palace. Many generations of English kings lived inside it. Inside, there are also an observatory, a prison, a chapel, an execution ground, a zoo, and a small wharf. I suggest that while building the city walls, you can also, on the waterway connecting the port and the city, build a castle fortress. This makes it convenient to control the transportation hub and easy to defend both the city and the port. This will also become your palace and command post in this city. If the main city and the port are built separately, then the port will also need its own wall defenses. This will greatly increase the cost of construction and defense. Therefore, whether to build the city directly on the coastline or to connect the port and the city via an inland river requires your careful consideration. Of course, if you have sufficient funds and construction time, then building 2 layers or even 3 layers of walls is also a good choice. The city's framework is basically complete. Now let's look at its internal composition. The church is a landmark building in the city, often located in the city's core. For example, Notre Dame Cathedral is located on the El de la site in the center of the Seine. In many cases, they are also the highest points in the city. Of course, the greatest cathedrals may take decades or even hundreds of years to build. Cologne Cathedral's construction began in 1248, but it was still not completed by the 16th century. Italy's largest church, the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence, began construction in 1296 and was only basically completed in 1436, and its exterior decoration was still not finished by the 16th century. Of course, you can also choose to build a magnificent cathedral in the most central and conspicuous location in the city to win the support of the church and its followers. At the same time, I strongly suggest you establish a square in front of the cathedral. This can serve as a public facility for the city and also make the magnificent cathedral even more imposing, attracting more people to your city. A splendid palace can demonstrate your nobility and be used to entertain distinguished guests. You can choose to place the palace within the castle fortress, or you can open up another piece of land in the city to build anew. Florence's Palazzo Vecchio is the administrative palace of Florence and also the luxurious residence of its lords. The Baucolian Palace in Constantinople was located in front of a small harbor on the city's south side, where statues of a bull and a lion stood, and the palace's name is a compound of the words for bull and lion. A palace built by the water allows its residents to enjoy the sea view and also facilitates daily travel by boat. It kills 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. Next, the market was also one of the most important facilities in the cities of this era. Sometimes, the rise of a city was precisely due to the prosperity of its market. The burgage and market theories suggest that medieval cities were formed by merchants gathering around fortified towns and castles, thereby taking shape. Every city, while being the residence of great landowners, was also the market on which the vast surrounding countryside depended. If its geographical location was superior, it, as a market, would also become the economic center of the region. In some towns and castles, market fairs might be held once or twice a week, allowing the surrounding villages to trade for what they needed and exchange surplus products. But the markets in the cities were more frequent. Sometimes daily markets were established. The scale of city markets was also grander, and the frequency of transactions far exceeded the former. It upgraded simple exchange to consumption, giving rise to an urbanized way of life. Sellers of specific goods paid a certain fee to the city administrators to obtain the right to use a stall. Butchers and bakers were mostly men, while female stallholders sold staples, such as eggs, dairy products, poultry, and ale. Generally speaking, markets would be built along the river or located at the intersections of central city streets. Various waterways or streets would lead from the market to the various city gates, thus providing more convenient access to the wider surrounding areas. Due to the relatively low cost of water transport, more markets tended to be located near rivers or seaports. Of course, a city might have multiple areas that served as markets for trade. The location of the market might also change periodically. Sometimes, the location of a stall was directly related to the type of goods sold. For example, horse traders were usually located near the city gates to attract passing travelers. Some critical industries, for example, goldsmiths and armorers, were usually located near the administrative residence for ease of supervision. Medieval cities were fortified cities, in a large part because merchants' trade required security from being robbed by gangs of bandits, and security to ensure order and fairness in transactions. Therefore, markets often featured crosses, stepped bell towers, and statues of Roland to symbolize the city's authority and right of judgment. To maintain order in the market, many cities would appoint guild inspectors to patrol the city regularly. The emergence of markets made the operation of caravans possible, increasing the frequency of long-distance trade. This further increased the variety of goods within the region. Of course, due to low transport costs, goods were still mainly circulated within a small area. Merchants needed to pay tolls at transportation choke points, so only luxury goods were worth transporting over long trade fairs. The King of France personally promised to protect merchants traveling to and from the fairs. Therefore, be sure to manage the market in your city diligently. This will become the city's greatest driving force for prosperity, and similar trade fairs should be strongly supported. If such grand events can be held here regularly, your city will surely become a prosperous place known far and wide. Besides these core facilities, a city in this era also needed many other components. Public bathhouses for citizens to clean their bodies could be funded and built by guilds or the church. Citizens or laborers could spend 1 or 2 of the smallest denomination coins to bathe once a week, ensuring hygiene and health. A fully functional and easily accessible wharf is an important facility in a water transport city. The area around the wharf itself is also very suitable for development as a market. However, be very careful to maintain order and sanitation in the wharf area to avoid chaos and the spread of plagues. At the same time, you should use a portion of the commodity circulation tax and tolls to repair wharves, bridges, and roads to maintain the normal operation of your city. I strongly recommend that you establish hospitals in the city and colleges. This work can be accomplished through the cooperation of the church and the city administration. Accomplished through joint effort. The planning of residential houses should also be forward-thinking. Otherwise, when you wish to expand the city or upgrade its infrastructure, overcrowded residential areas will become the biggest obstacle. Of course, to build a commercial city with a population of 100,000, the things mentioned above are just the basics of the basics. The actual implementation involves countless details. When you enter the concrete implementation phase, we can have further discussions on the relevant details. Finally, I wish that you can build a great city to be proud of. See you next time.